In this demo project, we have class named Prime Calculator Service, which extends the service class, and you can see the service superclass is parameterized by our Prime Calculator data object. This Prime Calculator service has a couple of configuration parameters specific to how we want to compute the prime numbers. So the number of primes and also next prime from, which is the starting value from where the search for primes should begin. I have a dedicated method called configure service, which calls setOnSucceed method of JavaFX service class, specifying anonymous class implementation of the event handler parameterized by worker state event, which requires the definition of the method named handle. This method handle will be invoked when the workload of our computation task completes successfully. And here we also call Prime Calculator notify observers, which is provided by the data publisher class, which is the superclass of our data object, the Prime Calculator. Whenever the state of the background task object changes, an event defined by the worker state event class occurs. For example, when the task object transitions to the succeeded state, this handle method will be invoked. And it's good to know that the handle method is always invoked on JavaFX application thread, not on the worker thread that did the actual work. So this is pure convenience to update all of our user interface components as necessary upon successful completion of the background work. And notice that we can also visualize the names of our threads inside the handle method and inside the call method also in the service implementation to verify which threads are executing the calls. In addition, you can see here in the service class documentation, similar to setOnSucceed, other handlers like, for example, setOnFailure, setOnCanceled, and so on. The possibilities are to specify how to handle other outcomes of our tasks besides successful completion. The constructor of our Prime Calculator service class takes Prime Calculator data object reference as a parameter and the rest of the parameters needed to run the computation. In addition, we also override create task method, which is also implementing anonymous abstract task for the Prime Calculator and constructing the task object. The only method that we have to override is named call, which returns a reference to our Prime Calculator data object, which is our business object that we would like to retain between execution of multiple background tasks. This is the method which is invoked by the background thread which is assigned to do the work. And for our work, we call Prime Calculator calculate next, which computes the block of prime numbers according to the numbers of primes parameter. So this is how our service implementation is organized. At the beginning of this project, I copied over a Prime Calculator data object model class from the previous demo and extended it from the publisher parameterized by the Prime Calculator itself. Let's also take a look at the controller class for this application. Down at the bottom here, I have onClick calculate method, which is the handler for the calculate button on the user screen. And it does some very basic validation of user inputs, basically using integer parse integer and long parse long for our inputs. And this is a typical responsibility of the controller class when handling user actions. Next, when the data is only accessed from one thread, it eliminates the risk of racing conditions. So this is why I decided to disable the button while the background calculation is already running. However, the rest of the user interface is working fine, including the X button to close the window if the user wants to exit the application before the computation is complete. And so when we construct our service, the instance of the class that we just discussed earlier, and then we call the start method, the task is created and its call method runs on the background thread. Alright, so this start results in the creation of a thread, and that thread is used to invoke this method of our task implementation. By default, JavaFX task is a daemon thread that is created and executed. So back to the controller, one more note to make is that the service object that we create here cannot be reused. We create brand new PrimeCalc service every time the button is clicked, and if you attempt to try to reusing the object of Prime Calculation service the second time, you will get an exception. You can only call start of the service object just once.